Now, when I said from the ground up, I mean actually purchasing the stock you're planning on making your project with. And there's 3 ways to do that. The first is called in the rough, or rough sawn. This is the way it comes from the mill. If I turn this around the back side, you'll actually see the mill marks. This is the most labor-intensive but cheapest way to buy material, because ultimately you're going to have to send this through a joiner and flatten the bottom and then thickness it. You're then going to go to the joiner and clean up one side, and finally on the table saw to cut it to width. When I look at wood like this, sometimes when I see it in the rough, it's hard for me to see the grain or maybe the color of the wood or some of the imperfections. But if you've got the tools and the time to do it, you really can't beat the price. The second way to buy material is called S2S. That's where the mill has done 2 of those operations for you. They've already flattened the bottom and they've thicknessed it. The only thing left for you is to joint one edge and then finally clean it up on the table saw. You'll pay a little bit more for this stock, but in many cases it makes it easier to read it. In this case, I can kind of see the color of that board. I can kind of watch what happens with the grain. I can also see some of the imperfections in here, which may change my decision to buy that particular piece of wood. The third way to buy lumber is called S4S, and here all the operations are done. This has already been jointed, thicknessed, edge jointed, and finally cut to size. This is the wood you'll normally find in home centers and the better lumber yards. It normally comes in standard widths and lengths. You'll pay a little bit more for this, but if you don't have the tools to do some of these other things, that may fit the bill perfectly. Now lastly, when you're selecting your material, be fairly particular here. Look down the end grain of that board and make sure it's nice and straight. We don't want to see a cup in that board. Sight the long end of that board and make sure that that's also straight. I want to see a bow here. And if you can find a flat spot by touching opposite corners and the board doesn't move, it means that what you've got is a board without a twist in it. Now, flat glue-ups call for flat stock. A twist or a cup or a bow are a problem, and removing those in your shop means reducing the thickness, the width, and the length of those boards. So be very particular when you buy your stock. And lastly, when you bring it back to your shop, it is not a good idea to stack it like this, where it's all flat one piece against another. The moisture conditions in the place that you bought it and where you're planning on using it are probably different. And these boards are going to give off or take in moisture to acclimate to your shop conditions. If they're stacked up like this, air can't move around that board, and what's going to happen is these boards will react to those changes without doing it evenly. The best way to take care of that is using a set of stickers like these. These are plywood. You can make them out of anything. They're about 3/4 by 3/4. By evenly spacing and stacking your boards with these stickers, air can move evenly all around them. Moisture can go out and come back in and do it evenly so that the boards gently expand and contract without that potential of twist or cup or bow.